she's crazy. So we get into it, and after a few weeks, she was nice, and I was calming her down, and the work was like, you had to polish these floors, and the silver. They had silver from Ascot here, the Ascot Cup they had, the horse racing, and it had to be cleaned every week, and we had special polish to clean it with white gloves, and then sometimes we'd have these dinner parties at night in a big round table, and you had to serve them in white gloves. And then we'd be in the kitchen, and the bell would go. Did you have a bell? She'd have a bell. We want this, we want that. Bring us this, bring us that. And the chef was doing a good job. And I thought, this is funny, this. This is just my sense of humour from Liverpool. I used to just go, this is brilliant. But I was laughing at them all. And then, all of a sudden, boom, one morning, I wake up at 4 a.m, and the smoke coming down the corridor. I'm going, what the hell is that? I could smell it, so I got up, and I could hear the rumbling of the car in the garage, and I thought, someone is stealing it. Someone's stealing the car. And I thought to myself, well, hang on a minute, I'll go out the front of the house, and I'll go round the back, and I had a key. You can put a key in the garage, and I opened it, and all this smoke hit me. This smoke hits me. And I'm going, what's this? The car's on fire. I'm thinking it's got a short in the battery, something like that. Next thing, I looked down at the car, and I seen the bottom of it, and the exhaust had a pipe in it, and the pipe was going into the car. And I went, hold on a minute. And I looked, and there she is in the car with the pipe in her mouth. And I couldn't believe it. So I dragged her out. The smoke's everywhere. I'm coughing like, And the first thing I done, I called the police. And I knew that there was something wrong, but I didn't know it was this drastic. Calls the police. Up in LA, the police come in an ambulance, and they all come together, the paramedics. And they come, it's like now it's about 4:30. They get there, they're giving her CPR, oxygen. She's alive. She starts coughing. But they knew her. She tried to do something before. And then what happened was, they had it on the gurney, and one of the paramedics and the cop come to me, and they got my details, and have you experienced? I said, no. So she's on the gurney, and she's got the oxygen on, and the cop said to me, taking the notes and the statements, can you tell me how old Mrs. Weinberg is? And I said, I think she's 43. And she takes the mask off and she goes, 44! And I went, oh my God. Oh, you lunatic. And you're doing this to us. We were subject to this, what we would see. So they took her to the hospital. So the chef and that, early in the morning, we got up and that. And I kept it quiet. I said, she's gone to the hospital. And I didn't say nothing to the chef. I just said, can you do some bacon and eggs and that and give us some orange juice? And I just sat there with the other butler and that. So the other butler, he said, I can't take it. So we went to the doctor, and the doctor advised them to quit the job. So they quit. Though she was in the hospital, and she's calling me from the hospital, from Sinai Medical Centre, from the room. What's the chef cooking me tonight? Are you bringing it over to me? And I'm going, well, don't you get fed in the hospital? It's a Sinai Medical Centre. It's one of the best hospitals in the world. So I said, what do you want? She went, go to Nate Nell's on Beverly Drive, she said, and get me some lox and salmon. And I thought, okay. So I'll get the Rolls Royce over, and I'll go over to the hospital. And I'm going to see in the Sinai Medical. She's in the psychiatric ward. I'm taking them in. I'm taking them into the ward. It's just unbelievable. I'm going, he's this Scouser from Liverpool. I'm in seeing the Sinai Medical Centre, and I'm taking bacon and lox to a Jew. It was nuts. And she went, thank you, Terry. And then one night, she'd be nice to me, and then she'd be going, and make sure you stay out the sun. It was absolutely bananas. So she stayed in there a while, and then she was released. She came home. But for some reason, she didn't like the chef. So
what nationality was the chef?
He was American.
American?
Yeah, he was gay. He was gay, and then, obviously, when he's gay. But I didn't judge him. I didn't mind because he was a good kid. He was just making a living. That's all he was doing. So I decided I just got along with it, and I was making good money. And I just kept, I just went along with it. And so she came home and one night, she come in the kitchen and the chef was, he was down by the pool. And he had a little dog and the dog used to bark. So she got everything out the fridge and she threw it all over the kitchen. The whole lot. I came out in the morning. All the food and the milk had been poured all over the kitchen on marble. One of the most beautiful kitchens you've ever seen. And I looked at it and I went, oh my God. Me and the chef, we just cleaned it up. And she was going bananas. So the chef come in at about 1 o'clock and he said to me, I'm getting out of here, Terry. I'm done. And he left me. And he just pissed off. He didn't even get paid.
It wasn't worth it.
It wasn't worth it. It wasn't worth it. So I'm left there. And it's Elvis's old house. And it had some beautiful parties there because Elvis used to fly all the hula dancers in from Hawaii, I believe, in the day. And it was unbelievable, I got told. Periodically, Mr. Weinberg would come back home and I'd serve him filet mignon and I'd do him lovely meals, me and the chef and that. Really lovely gentleman, man. But he'd only stay one night because she used to, I'd hear them arguing in the room. And she'd get his closet and she'd take all his suits and she'd dump them in the corridor. And she went, you can fuck off, you can get back to Hawaii. I don't want you in this home. And I was like, oh my God. She'd go, Teddy, what's for my dinner? And I'd go, okay, we've got you something nice. It was absolutely unbelievable. And what it reminded me of the Cuckoo's Nest. You know, the Cuckoo's Nest that was done in 75. It was just like that. So I stayed and I was the only one there. And I just carried on during the day and I thought, well, my time's coming to an end. And I didn't know that she had a gun in the bedroom. Yeah, she had a mental woman in Truesdale Estates in Beverly Hills had access to a gun. So this morning, I got up and I didn't hear from her. And it was very hard. I was more compassionate because, coming from Liverpool, what we've seen and what I'd gone through in my life, we'd had more empathy for people, because we'd all come from a close area where, we'd always helped each other. And I always felt that way. And this morning, I knew there was something wrong this day. Something weird was going to happen. Anyway, she was okay. I got her some lunch. I did a tuna fish sandwich for her with a pickle and a coffee. And I took it into the room. And I looked at her and I thought, she's not well. So I asked her what she wanted that evening. And she always said salmon and lox. And I was very uneasy this day. There was something going to happen really bad. I prepared the tray. And as I was walking down, it was like, as I say, the movie Out The Shining. And the gun went off.
Did you hear it?
Yeah. The gun went off. And I knew. And that was the end.
Did you find her?
I was a bit scared, apprehensive to go in the room at the time. And but I thought at the time that if I call the police, there's going to be a big investigation. And it crossed my mind to think, that they might be accusing me. So I sort of half went in and I didn't go in. But, I knew. So what I did is I went to the kitchen and I called the police. And they knew. They knew. And it was sad. And then my life was... So when I wrote the chapter in the book, the Weinberg tragedy, and that gives more detail about it. So I decided to... I was on my way back then. The Butler's on the move again.
Max Factor.
Yeah. So I'd got my stuff. The police came, the homicide came. They'd done a big investigation and that. Police had asked me, but they knew what was going on. And he said, took my phone number, and Mr. Weinberg was in Hawaii. And that was the end of it. That was at the end of Mrs. Weinberg.
It was expected.
Yeah, it was. It was very sad. I'd never thought I'd be in this position that I was a major domo. Yeah. So I took a few weeks off, went down the beach, went back in the gym, seeing Jimmy, done some training, and I was getting calls every day. And I'd run up from Santa Monica to Venice, and I'd run up to Malibu just to get it all out of my mind. And I got a call. Terry, there's a beautiful gentleman. He'd like you to come to his home. I said, well, let me come up to the agency. Okay, so I got dressed up as usual in my suit, and I went to the agency. And I sat with her, and I didn't say nothing about the Weinbergs, because she knew. You didn't have to say anything. It was in The Guardian in London, the news. My brother had called me and said to me, it was. Since then, I think they've erased it all from the record and the Beverly Hills Police. And I just carried on. So I went to see Dora, and she said, I've got a lovely job for you in Beverly Glen. And I said, okay. So I got back in the swing, I goes back in the swing, and it was for a gentleman called Max Factor, the Moogan makeup man. And it was Max Factor Jr. Yeah.
My mum used to use Max Factor all the time when I was a kid.
Yeah, it was great. So I goes to his house, and he's an older gentleman, and he had these nurses 24 hours taking care of him because he was getting on a bit. So he liked me being around him because I was young, and but before that, I'd had another interview with the director of Lethal Weapon. I'd had an interview with him, and I'd met the butler in his house. His name was Richard Donner. He directed the movies with Mel Gibson, and I'd been to his house before, Max Factor's, and it was up in Hollywood Hills, and he wanted me to come and work for him, but I didn't like the situation, and I always remembered he had guns in the home. So anyway, I took the position with Mr. Factor, because I found it more informal. Takes the position with him. Drives him every day to Malibu in a blue Rolls Royce. Takes him out. Takes him everywhere with me. And in the afternoon, I'd sit with him on an afternoon tea. It was more like a companion than a butler. And then the nurses were like, they were nice. But they had the family, they were Russian Jews as well. And some of the family converted from being Jews to Catholics or Protestants, because they'd come and stay at his daughters, and they'd tell me. I always remember one incident. It was his birthday, and I took him down to the Tudor house where I used to work, and I took him in, and the baker then was my brother-in-law David McNally. He took Alan's position up because Alan got deported. And we gave him sausage rolls and steak and kidney pie, and he wouldn't stop eating. But from seeing his sign in medical centre, we had a nutrition diet, and we had to keep to the guidelines, and we had to keep to his weight at 165. So every morning we weighed him. Every time I took him out, he was £10 overweight. Because I used to love feeding him and just taking him out, making him happy. And then the nurses would say, he's £10 over. I said, no, you just got the reading wrong. It's 163, 167. It's not 175. Okay, did you get it? And she'd go, okay, I've got it. And it was nice. But we had this, one of his daughters, Barbara, would come over, and she was the iron whip. She cracked the whip on the nurses, and they felt very uncomfortable with her. So she pulled up in this big Jaguar, this British Jaguar that they had made, and everything had to be British, you know, the Bentley, the Jaguar. And this day, so I caught her in the corner, and she was smoking. And she got out the car, and she went in the corner, and she was smoking a cigarette. So what I decided to do was, I just went out, and I said to her, good morning, Mrs. Bentley. I said, can I have a cigarette? And she went, do you smoke, Terry? I went, yeah, I'll have a ciggy. I didn't smoke, but I just wanted to play this game with her. So she gave me a cigarette, and then she's standing in front of me, so she's got to finish the cigarette with me. So what's she going to do? She's got to talk to me. So I built this rapport with her, and I'd asked her, have you ever been to England, and have you ever been here and all that? Because you couldn't get near her. And she was the heir to the throne of the Max Factor the family, yeah, all the kids, worth billions. So I decided to have the cigarette. And I said to her, you know when you come over here, you know, the household's great and your father's happy. He's under the guidelines of the hospital. Everything's brilliant. And she said, his birthday's coming up, you know, Terry. What are you going to do? I said, well, just leave it to me. I'll do all English style. I said, I can do an English trifle. I can do a souffle, a chocolate souffle. And we'll do salmon and cucumber sandwiches. And I'll set the table beautiful with white roses, pink roses. And I said, you can invite all the family. I said, will you do me one condition? Can you back off the nurses? And I'd like you to teach them, and with respect, teach them actually, have respect for them, because they feel uncomfortable. They're only human beings, and they're looking after the golden man. That's what they're doing, and that's what we're here for. Without us, you wouldn't have no one. And she said, Terry, I will. I'm sorry if I've offended them. Because she was. And they really respected me. Anyway, this party came, and I'd done the table beautiful. I'd set it so beautiful, like the QE2. I put champagne on the tables, but, you know, it was non-alcoholic, pink and white. And we had this beautiful party. And it was absolutely, all the family came, about 25 of them. And she was very proud of it. She said, what, the way you've set the table. Because that's the way they used to set it on the QE2. You know, very formal, and all the silver service. So when it was finished that night, he come round, and Annette, my wife, she was helping with me. She always came in to help me. And he came round, and he'd shuffle around the living room at night to get some exercise with the nurse. And he took an envelope out of his pocket, and he gave it to me. And it was $2,000 tip. And I never looked at it. I just took it. And I said, thank you, Mr. Factor. And I put it in my pocket. And later on I counted, it was two grand. And I just carried on with the job. And then a few months later, my sister was coming from England, the UK, to visit. And I gave her the address of my place to put down on 4th Street in Santa Monica. So she comes through the immigration, and she gets stopped by the immigration. And they stop her, and they say, where are you going? And they find the address with my phone number. Next thing, she had the phone number at Factor's house. I gave her that number as well, because I could answer the phone. I was the one that answered the phone all the time at the household, because then I knew she was coming in, and I was going to go, and when I finished work, I was going to pick her up. So she was coming in, and she got stopped, and the phone went. We'd done fish. I always remember what I gave him. It was orange roughy, and I'd done a cucumber salad, and he had some cranberry juice and a chocolate mousse that evening. And the phone went, and I picked the phone up and went, hello, can I help you, the Max Factor residence? And this guy said, hello, this is the United States Immigration. We want to speak to Terry Moogan. And I went, yeah, speaking. He said, we'd like you to come down to the immigration. I said, where? He said, to the Los Angeles airport. He said, we're holding your sister. And we know that you're illegal. And I went like that. I just put the phone down. Goes in. My living quarters. Packed the case. Packed it all. Got in my car and left. Without saying goodbye to Mr. Factor. Went down to my apartment, Santa Monica. Got a net. And we had to move to a hotel for 2 weeks till it all quietened down. Went back to Factors. He was bluffing me, the immigration officer. I found out then by law that was against the law to go to a private residence. He was bluffing me. He bluffed me. So I had to leave. A few weeks later, moved back in the apartment. They let my sister in. They given an immigration hearing in Los Angeles. I said, don't go. Just fly back to England. Don't put up with all this shit here. And I proceeded on. And went back to the house, Factors. And he was very upset with me. And he said, I would have sponsored you, Terry. I'll get you the green card. And then I just left. And then I was back to the agency again then. I was back at the agency. And then I went back to the agency. And there was a job come up for the A-list actor. There was a few of them came up. Tom Bosley came up. Steven Spielberg came up. Mickey Rooney came up. And I'd actually gone to... I went to Spielberg and done an interview with him at his studios. And I didn't like his behaviour, the way he was behaving. He had some parrots in the kitchen, and he said to me, these parrots are more important than my wife. And he was married to an actress called Amy Irving at the time. He was married to her. And I thought, you're very acting very unusual. And, well, you know, you can come to my house and, you know, you can try it out for the week and see how you like it and all that. And I just looked at him.
Parrots are more important than his wife.
Yeah. Parrots are more important than his wife. And he said, you got to clean the parrots, the cages out every day and all that. And I said, well, I'm a butler. I said, I'm not a gamekeeper. And he looked at me. So I pulled out of that one. I just pulled out. And then I went up to Mickey Rooney, the famous actor in Westlake Village. He was just absolutely nuts. I thought, I don't want no part of you. And then I went back. And then, so this big actor came up, George Siegel. So I went to George's home, and he lived in Bel Air, a beautiful place. And I goes to him. He'd been with he'd done a movie called Virginia Woolf with Elizabeth Taylor, and he was friends, he told me, with Richard Burton. And I told him I took care of them on the QE2. Anyway, cut a long story short, he hires me in his home in Bel Air. This beautiful home in Bel Air. It was gorgeous. I had done living quarters. What does it come with the job again? Big white Rolls Royce. And a red Aston Martin. So George had this garage, and he had a few sets and then he was doing a few movies at the time. And he'd done a lot of movies, George. He'd done The Longest Day and he'd done The Valentine's Massacre and then The Owl and the Pussycat with Jane Fonda. And Glenda Jackson, she won an Oscar with him for some class act or something like that. And me and George, we got become friends. And anyway, he had this garage and he had all the movies in the garage, the posters. And I asked him one day, I said, can I paint the garage? I want to put all your movies up for you. And he went, that would be great. And I painted the garage for him. And I put all the movies around the garage. And he had a lovely wife, Linda. And she was the manager of the Pointer Sisters. Remember the Pointer Sisters? Yeah. She was the manager of them. And he said to me, you'll get to meet a lot of people here, Terry. So I just carried on normal. And actually, the quarters, but he preferred me to live outside the home. So I'd go home at 5 o'clock. And it was a good little job. So I'd done the garage for him. And one day, he was going to lunch with a friend, another actor, and he never showed up. And so they had a table booked at the Brown Derby on Sunset. It was on Sunset or Wiltshire Boulevard. It was a famous restaurant. So we decided, I said, what car do you want, George? No, well, it's called Mr. Savile. And he said, just we'll take the Aston Martin. So here's me and him going down in the Aston Martin, pair of glasses on, driving down Sunset. Everyone's looking at us. Pulls up to the Brown Derby, gets out the car, everyone's staring at the both of us. This older actor, they thought I was an actor. And we just gets out and walks in the restaurant. And I'm watching everyone and they're all staring at us. It was unbelievable. And come back to the house, and then in the afternoon, I'd do them evening meals. I'd leave him and his wife evening meals. So one particular day, he was having a party in the garden and he gave me a list of actors to pick up. And he said, take the white Rolls Royce because it'll fit them all in. And he asked me, what are you doing for lunch? I said, well, I'll do an Irish stew. It's my mother's recipe. It's about 100 years old. And he looked at me, really? And he said, yeah. Said, it's called Scouse. Said, it's called Scouse. And he went, really? Yeah, said, but it's Irish. Says, my mother's recipe. I said, I used to learn it from her when I was a kid. And so the day come, I set the garden and all that. And I was excited. That's the Rolls Royce. I got the list off him. The list had consisted of Buddy Ackie, famous comedian, always doing Las Vegas. Burt Reynolds. I knew where Burt Reynolds lived because I lived next door to him in Wiseman's. And Charles Dernan. And then there was another guy that was going to come later that I didn't know, he didn't tell me. Anyway, goes down, picks Buddy Ackie up, knocks on the door and said, yeah, Mr. Siegel's guest today. He comes out, little Buddy comes out, he's a comedian, funny little guy he was. He was always on the Johnny Carson show, a lot. And he goes, I'm packing. And I was going, what? Oh, he must have a gun. Yeah, I'm packing, I pack all the time. Everywhere I go, I pack. And I'm like that, wow. Well, get in. Anyway, get in, gets him in the car, shuts the car, goes over to Burt Reynolds, goes to the gate, presses the buzzer. Hello, yeah, guest from Mr. George Siegel. I'm the chauffeur. Burt comes out. Burt comes out. He's about 6'2", dead handsome, you know. Gets in the car, closes the car on him, goes down to another house on, it's just off Roxbury Drive. And goes to that house. It was at the top of Roxbury on Lexington. It was on the corner. And I pulled up there. They were all gated areas. And it was Charles Dernan. And gets him out. I've got the three of them in the back of the car. And I'm the chauffeur, and I'm looking at them, and I'm clocking them in the back. And I'm going, this is brilliant. It's like a movie. Gets to the house. They all go in the garden, sit down. I've got the scouse warmed up, and George is smoking a big cigar. Always smoking a cigar. You know, when he was on the Johnny Carson show, smoking this big cigar, he was unbelievable. And he made his own mission one day to doing cocaine, and thought that was a bit like weird for him to do that to the public, but they can do what they want. So he said to me, Terry, bring the boys in the car, do you want a drink? And I got them all a drink, and I'd served them on silver. It was always silver, nice, you know. And he said, Terry, there's another guy coming. He'll be in about half an hour. So I'm in the kitchen and preparing all the food, and I've done some cabbage as well, and beetroot with the scouse, and I've got it all ready, warmed up and that. And I've got to serve it on the plate, beautiful plates, and I'll take it out. Next thing, the doorbell goes to the door, and I open the door. It's Robert Redford. And I went, good afternoon. Welcome. I said, would you like a drink? He said, yeah, what have you got? And I said, they're all drinking scotch. I said, do you want a scotch? He went, sure, why not? So next thing, they all went in the garden. They're all sitting in the garden, and gave them the scouse. So George has got a script. He used to get these scripts from Hollywood, and I'd see them in the bathroom, and I'd have a little look at them. And it was brilliant. So he gets the script, and he's in the garden, and he gets the script, and he gets angry, and he throws it up in the air, and he throws it on the fucking floor, and he goes, I'm fucking sick of that goddamn Marlon Brando. You know, this guy makes so much money every movie. And I'm like that. He said, I should be making enough. So Robert Redford says to him, calm down. And I'm watching this. George gets a cigar, and he said, it's not like you, George. Why are you getting upset? And I'm just looking at them all in the garden. I'm shaking my head. So anyway, they have the scouse. They're all sitting there laughing and talking shite. And George comes in the kitchen. And I said to him, what are you getting upset for? Because I was quite close to him. And he said, Marlon Brando. I said, well, there you go. I said, what an actor. One of the greatest theatre actors in the world. And he said to me, how do you know? Why would you know that? I said, well, I'd been to Joan Rivers' house, the comedian, and while I was working for George, and he didn't know. And I'd been assigned for 6 weeks on the weekends. And she'd asked me to look after George. Siegel had said to the agency, no, he can't go. He's under contract with me. I said, I'm under no contract. I didn't sign. It's called a contract where you sign and you don't show any talk about nobody. NDA, yeah, a non-NDA disclosure. And so I said, no, I can do what I want. And he knew what I was going there. Because I'd said to him in the kitchen, I'd actually said to him, Marlon Brando. I said, I've been to Joan Rivers' house. On the weekends, I go there, and I'm taking care of Salon and Sylvia. And he told me that Marlon Brando was one of the greatest actors that he'd ever seen in his life. I said, so you should be honoured to be in that position with him. You should be honoured. I said, he's unbelievable. And one question that I'd asked Salon Sylvia, when I did take care of him, was who was the greatest actor? And he had mentioned Marlon Brando. And then me and George got back again, and they went out in the garden, And someone had mentioned about the butler, and someone said to him, wouldn't it be beautiful to have a butler in a movie? And he points to me and he goes, there he is, there. That's him. He's been around. So I looked at him and I went, yeah, I'm the butler. I'm playing my part on the screen, but you don't see me. It's Oscar performance. Robert Redford looked at him and went, George went, I told you, should have been an actor. Just like that. I just started laughing and I'm going, fucking hell, the bank robber. I'll start out as the bank robber. I'll do that movie first and then the butler. Oh my God. So next thing, I stayed with George a while and anyway, things were getting on top of me, but I'd always been in touch, Shaun, with a butler at Richard Donner's home.
When we wake up in the morning, we get out of bed and we start our day with Coro snacks. Coro is a healthy snacks brand focusing on bringing additive-free, natural ingredients to their customers with fair prices in bulk packaging. They have everything from nut butters to free from baking ingredients to cooking essentials and, of course, the snacks. And the energy balls are delicious.
They're my favourite, the salted pistachio.
Ooh.
Can't wait to have this morning.
Let's see what this one tastes like.
Cheers.
Cheers. So what makes Coro special in comparison to others? Their bulk packaging allow them to offer their customers high quality products at a fair price. For a 5% discount on Coro's products, use the code TRUECRIME with no space in between true and crime. The link to Coro's online shop is in the description box on YouTube. Thanks for supporting our sponsor.
I'd shared an experience with him that we would meet at a park below Spelling's house, the big producer, in the Holmby Hills. And he would drive a maroon Rolls Royce and I would drive a blue Rolls Royce, and we'd meet in a park because we'd had the same interview and I'd met him in an agency, and we crossed swords in a shop called Gelson's in Century City where you do all the shopping for the stars. And he asked me to come up to the house to Richard Donner's to meet Mel Gibson. And I said, I'll come up and have a cup of tea and that, I said I wasn't particularly interested because I'd met a few of them. I'd met Stallone's butlers, Kevin King and Paul Kane. They were Stallone's butlers. I'd met them years and years before this, and they were my friends. And they told me all about Stallone. So there's quite a few English butlers. But this guy particularly was telling me he was so engrossed with his job. We had a cup of tea one afternoon in Richard Donner's, and his wife was going to school to be a psychologist. And they were leaving the job. So what he decided to do, he decided to take his own life.
No.
Yeah. And I was telling him that I was going to be leaving and going back to England. And I didn't know at the time how bad it was. And I'd only had a few weeks left. I was returning because I'd been in touch with some solicitors and they had told me to come back at the time. If the time could be appropriate for me to go back. Anyway, I got news from his wife that he'd took a gun of Richard Donner's and he'd killed himself. He shot himself in the home. And it was the headlines in all the papers, British butler dies in movie star's home, and producer's home, Richard Donner. It was so sad what he'd done. So anyway, I ended my relationship with George Siegel. Actually, George was moving back to New York. He'd got his face done. He had a facelift and he was selling the house in Bel Air and they were moving to New York. And it was time for me to leave. So I'd made an arrangement to fly back to England to face justice. because of the pressure. So I went to Palm Springs for the weekend with my wife, and I'd called a solicitor in Liverpool. His name is Rob Brody. He was a good friend of mine, and he's passed on now. And he said, "Come on, Teddy, just try it, see what you think." I said, "Will you represent me?" He went, "Yeah." So we decided to leave Los Angeles, and I rented my apartment out to a friend. I said, "If I don't come back, I can keep it." But there was a bit of, I thought I'd get about 7 years to 10 years at the time. I just had this beautiful life in California, and I'll be going back to face 10 years, or it could have been 15 years. I just wanted to get it over with. So we get back to Liverpool, gets back and goes to the city centre, and I know everyone. Goes to the solicitor's office and says, "Teddy, can we have some coffee with you?" Says, "Yeah, all right." Goes with Rob around the town, and he said to me, "Teddy, you've been away for 6 years. I don't think they've got nothing on you. I think you'd be exonerated by now." He said, "I'll make some inquiries." And his advice to me was not to give myself up. That was the advice. So I stayed in Liverpool, and I'd met two of the old partners. And Joey Wright had betrayed the both of them. And I was outside the outskirts of a home, and one of them said to me, "Teddy, will you come in with us? We're going to kill Joey." And I looked at them and said, "Yeah, we've got the gun upstairs." They had a shotgun, they had a handgun, and they said they're going to kill Joey Wright. And I sat and I looked at them and I went, "Hang on a minute. I've been in Beverly Hills, I've done this life, and I've come back to this." And then some of the crime families at the time had invited me to do importation. But my life had changed the day I was in Wiseman's with the money and the redemption. And I'd been married 8 years, and I'd wanted children. Anyway, my two friends, I had to change their thinking. And I told them, they said, "He knows you're home." And Joey at the time was doing massive importation. I could have got in with Joey. So what I came up was an agreement with my friends that if you kill him, that I was associated to Joey, going back on the statements that he'd made against me, and I would be targeted. I'd be his enemy, because they knew, the cops, that he blew me up and he had that connection with them. And I was one of the closest people to him at the time. So I changed these guys' minds and I said, "Listen, why don't we do this? Why don't we tax him?" And they looked at me and said, "Well, that's not a bad idea." I said, "Let me sort it out for you." And they said, "Well, he's scared of you, Teddy. We know he's scared of you." I said, "Well, them days are gone. As far as I'm concerned, I'm going to go back to the United States anyway." So I'd met some of the crime families, had some drinks with them all over the city, and they were delighted to see me. "What are you going to do with Joey?" And they thought I was going to have a straightener with him, and I was going to do something. And I went, "Nah, lad." I said, "I've got nothing against him. You know, he's a blow-up merchant. He's a super grasser." And that was it. So what I decided to do was to go to his home. I know he was a bit of a tough guy, but to me it was nothing. I'd been dealing with all my life. So I went to his home, and he lived in Liverpool on Queen's Drive. one night. And it was April, I'd arrived, and it was light at night. So about 6:30, I went to the house. I just bang, 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 knocked on the door. And his wife opens it, Mary. Her name was Mary or Mary. She was a nice girl. She had 2 kids, young Joseph and Michael Wright. And I said, hello, Mary. I said, it's Terry, how are you? I've just come home from the States. Joey pops his head around the corner and he goes, is that you, Terry? I went, all right, how are you? And he said, how are you doing? I went, all right. And he didn't come to the door. He stayed where he was. And I went, here a minute, what's the matter with you? Come out, what's to do, lad? So he comes out. And, he's put some weight on. He was a bit of a fat lad. And, but he could have a go, like. And I had a lot of bottle, this fella. And I knew what he was doing through the grapevine, through others. And I kept that to myself. So I said to him, listen, can I have a pint with you? And we'll go up to Walton Road, to the Black Horse. I need to speak to you. He said, you've got a nice house. Got a lovely kids. Lovely wife. I just need to speak to you. I said, Joe, it's not about me. It's in your best interest to come with us. I said, you're safe. I've got no one with me. I said, Joey, I'm standing here now. If I pulled a gun out, I could kill you right now. It's not about that. I said, come with me, let's have a pint. So we walked up. It was only a few bus stops away. We walked up to Walton Road. And he was making a lot of dough at the time. A lot of dough in the 80s. And I'd heard that. So I sat with him. I had a drink with him. I said, listen, do you want 150,000 quid? And he looked at me and went, what? I said, do you want 150? I said, I'm the messenger. You've got to come up with 150,000 in cash. I said, if you don't, I think your life will be in danger. And it's a possibility that your sons will be targeted too. They'll be targeted. And that's all I've got to say to you. He said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 75. I said, no. Joey, it's 150. I said, I'm going to come back tomorrow. And he looked at me. He said, do you want another pint? And I didn't drink that much. I said, come on, I'll have another one. So I have another one with him. And he sits. I said, listen, lad, I'm going back to the United States. I said, your trial that you had with me, you had made statements against me. And I had the trial out with him in the pub. I said, you had boxed the jury off. You paid the jury for the not guilty. And that was my advice I gave you, to follow the jury home on the bus. And I had done this for some people on the docks early in my life, to follow the jury. And I'd get behind them on the back of the bus. An old friend of mine, Joe Evans, had been caught with a wagon load of whiskey and he was in custody. And I was pulled in with them with a good old friend called Jerry Bennett. And I was young at the time and I followed the jury and I got behind them on the bus. And I said, make sure you come in with a not guilty tomorrow. It's in your best interest. And I'd passed that on to Joey, what to do. And I got that message to him. And we always talked about that, how we would box off the Liverpool jury. And it worked for Joey. They even had the glass that they planted from the security guard onto Joey's clothes for forensic. That's how much they wanted to frame him. And they put it on my clothes. But the jury still came back in and he was found not guilty. I said, but what you told the cops, you exactly told the police that I had left to California, Joey, and it was in the Echo. It was an headline in the Echo. Liverpool man escapes to America after attacking a security guard on Scotland Road. You actually told them I went to Los Angeles. How fucking dumb are you? I said, but I tell you what, lad, I'm talking now our Liverpool language. They're going to have you. I said, you've got half an hour for me to cough. You've got half an hour, I'm leaving. I'm fucking off back to the United States to get on with my life. What do you think? He said, what about 100? I said, I've just told you. It's 150. So tomorrow, Joey, there's going to be a car parked on County Road. In the back of the car, it's going to be a Medeo. They had the Medeo out there. This new car had come up with Medeo. This fella had a Medeo. The car's going to be parked there. The plates were changed on it. And I said, take the money. And I don't want you to bring it into the pub. Because if you set me up, Joey, and I get arrested, that's drug money. That you give them, that's what you're making now. And he said to me, all right, Terry. I said, I'm telling you, lad, I've just saved your life. I've actually saved your life. And you were the one that gassed me up. I said, but I want to thank you for that because you actually changed my life. And I'd seen through this. I said, I went to Beverly Hills and I'd become a good butler and I've had a good life and I'm going back to get some more. So thanks, mate. I said, go on your way, Joey. Anyway, I said, I'll see you tomorrow. Don't bring any heavies in, mate. Don't bring any guns. I said, and I will be here. Take the money and put it in the Medeo on this street. Besides the Black Horse, the back door's open, and the two guys, my other partners, were watching the Medeo. He takes the money, he puts it in. They watched him. He comes back out. He said, do you want to have a pint? I said, no thanks. I knew then I was outside in case anything happened to me on the inside. And I said, Joey, good luck. God bless you. So what happened to his life and his children's life, his son was executed. Mickey Wright was executed on East Lancashire Road at a Kentucky Fried Chicken. Joey became a mule. Importation to Scotland of heroin. The police had followed him one morning, got on the train with him and followed him to Scotland. They raided the apartments in Scotland and found all the heroin and the cocaine. And the judge gave them 100 years. They got 25 years each. Joey ended up in Scotland in jail, doing 25 years. Later on in his life, he got out. I think they dropped it to 15 years. He'd actually asked me to come in with him. There's no way I could have done it. Because I was on my way back. His life was cut short down. The sentence was cut short down to 14 years. There was an order from a judge, and I think they confiscated his homes. He had multiple homes. He come out, he was depressed, became an alcoholic, went to Alcoholics Anonymous, and then he fixated in his sleep, and he died on his own sick. And Joey had passed away. And that was the end of Joey's life.
How old was he?
I don't know at the time, Shaun. I don't know. It was very sad. The other two guys, I saved their lives for not killing him. Because I know for a fact what had gone on in Liverpool, all the killings, that these would have got caught. The same with my other friends who were executing Darren G. They finally got caught. That was the life of Liverpool. So then I would return to the United States to start a new life.
That's 1987.
1987.
That's the yuppies and the stock market crash year, isn't it?
Yeah,
Margaret
yeah,
Thatcher.
87, yeah, Margaret, yeah.
So you go to Orange County.
Go to Orange County. Goes back to Dora. Goes back
Good
to
old
Dora.
Dora.
Good old Dora. The best international agency in the world. Now I was powerful. I was classed then as the most wanted Hollywood butler in Hollywood. And I'd heard about Orange County. And this gentleman was an attorney. And he owned a 5-acre estate. So I decided to take a chance and drive to Orange County. The gentleman's name, the lawyer, was named Terry Giles. He is now Ben Carson, who ran for president. He's his attorney and his advisor. I get down to Orange County with my wife, Annette. It was a Sunday morning. And I always remember it was May. And I pulled up to the house, all gated, beautiful surroundings. And it was on a hill called Peacock Hill. And the reason why it was called Peacock Hill was where the peacocks used to roam. And went in, had an interview with him. His house was 5,000 square feet. He had a cinema, 5 acres outside, waterfalls. Very, he was only 38. Took me to my house next door. My house next door had a swimming pool. My house was 4,000 square feet. Had a gym in it. Everything. It was unbelievable. Next thing, the house next door, he'd knocked down. It was $1 million and he built a tennis court. And he said to me, we've got some lovely exotic birds outside, and they had peacocks and swans. Oh my God, I've never seen nothing like it. It was like paradise. It was like a big hotel in Hawaii. And he had a lovely wife, Patty, at the time, and him and my wife connected. Patty's wife and Annette connected. And he sat back in the living room, and the living room was massive. And he sat with me and he said, I feel so comfortable with you. So I said to him, I'm not sure at the moment. He said, I'd love to offer you the job. I said, he said, I own a Toyota dealership. And I told him I just got back from England. He said, I can give you the new car for coming down. He said, I'll give you a Toyota Supra. You can take it off the showroom floor. I said, I appreciate that, Mr. Giles. I said, but I've got to go back to LA tomorrow to meet Johnny Carson, the interviewer, in Malibu. And I wanted to meet Johnny Carson. So I decided to hold off on him. And he said to me, will you commit to me? I said, I'll tell you what, listen, I love the grounds and that. And I love everything about what's going on here. But this interview's been set up. I've got to go. 95%, I'll come to you. And I negotiate the wage. The wage was good money. I'd be living in, to have all his credit cards, the car, and just the wage. The wage was like $80,000 in 1987. It was good money. It's quite a lot of money. I thought if I save up like for 5 years, I'll have $500,000. 10 years, I'll have $1 million to buy a home. And anyway, I said, I'll be in touch with the agency. Next day, gets up, said to my wife, don't come with me. I'm going to drive to Malibu. Went to a place called Blue Heaven. Johnny Carson's estate. It's called Blue Heaven. Yeah, in Malibu. Went in and met Johnny. I went through the motions with the interview. I really didn't want the job. What stuck in my mind was the freedom of having a lovely home in Orange County, but doing this job. So, went back to Zora. She called me that afternoon. She said, what's your decision? I said, I'll take Orange County. And I moved to Orange County. Moved to Orange County. Goes in the home, in the kitchen. There was a note. to me and Annette, and 2 cups, and it said, "Welcome aboard." And it said, "For Mr. and Mrs. Giles, this is one of the luckiest days of our lives that we've met you."
Oh, isn't that nice?
And a note and a month's wages. It was $6,500. And I went, "Oh, these must be nice people." And so all what I'd gone through. But the problem was I was half exonerated, but not exonerated.
Uh-oh.
I'd been told to keep away, but I wasn't totally exonerated. So it still had a profound effect on my mind.
Slating away, yeah.
Slated in there. But I knew that I could just get on with it. And I changed, and I thought about, I had 2 weeks holiday, and I thought I'll go to the Hawaiian Islands. I thought I'll go there. And anyway, I took the job for Mr. Giles. And he'd been in the news big time. His offices were underneath the stairway of the tennis courts. And he had all his pictures on the wall in the Los Angeles Times. And I looked at them all. The Hillside Strangler, the Freeway Killer, Martin Luther King's estate he took care of. Richard Pryor, when he was Freemason, he was his lawyer. Frank Sinatra's lawyer. He was Frank Sinatra's lawyer. Frank Sinatra Jr. There's a thing when women accuse him for having babies. I don't know what the name of it is. And Terry Giles would defend Frank Sinatra's son. And Giles would always go to Palm Springs. So basically, I started with Giles. I put this curriculum together for the home, and I had to put a menu because they had a wine cellar, a cinema, and they would dine in different places on a Saturday night, and they had this palatial koi pond outside where it overlooked the grounds, and this is where I would serve them at night on the weekends, and they'd have all guests over. It was absolutely beautiful. So I started the job. Everything was fine. Gourmet cooking. Everything. I took lessons from, there was a private club down in, called the Golden Door in Escondido. Wiseman had actually sent me there when I'd worked for Wiseman for French cooking lessons, and he paid for it for me. So, but I didn't give them too much because sometimes you give them too much and they expect too much as well. So I didn't give too much. I always kept a lot back. I just started on the job. He takes me the first week to Garden Grove Toyota. He said, "Which car do you want?" There's a Celica, Toyota Supra, and another. I said, "I'll take that."
The Supra.
I took the Supra.
I had a Supra around then as well.
Did
well,
you?
in the 90s, yeah.
Yeah.
Badass twin turbo thing.
Yeah. Well, there was the Celica and there was the Supra. So I got the Celica and just parked it outside the house. That was my day car for my day off. And then we had another Toyota for the chores. So I settled down with him, doing a lot of entertaining at the weekends, keeping up on the grounds, maintenance, me and my wife. A lot of work involved. It was structured every day. So he told me that there was someone that was coming very important to the grounds. To me, it wasn't significant, but to them it was significant. And he knew that I was the top quality man, that I would serve him, me and my wife. And I never questioned him. I just entertained. But this day, he was excited, and he'd represented Martin Luther King's family, the estate. He was the lawyer for that. So this day, I sort of kept my distance from him. He was a brilliant lawyer. And I just asked him one day, I said, who's the guest this weekend? I said, because you're so excited. I've never seen you excited. He said, oh, it's Oprah Winfrey and Stedman. I said, oh, is it? I said, that'll be nice, won't it? Get to meet Oprah, eh? And he went, yeah. Anyway, so I was a little bit excited, like, and it was so. She'd just done the movie A Colour Purple at the time.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, she'd done that movie with Whoopi Goldberg. So he asked me what I was doing. I said, well, we'll do something light for her because she was always on a diet. And I started laughing. I said, I'll do the nice salmon, with the ginger on the top and that. And I said, I'll do a chocolate sundae for her, souffle. And I'll do a nice salad and something nice and light. So the dining room, it was all gold silk. It was gold plated. It was absolutely gorgeous. Marble. It was just, it's hard to explain it. It was like out of a movie. Anyway, the night came and we were all set. And we'd had a gazebo on the grounds with all the waterfalls. So when you entered, I picked Oprah up at the gates. 2 big white gates opened in a limousine. Good evening. How are you? Good evening, sir. Brings them in. Giles is waiting down at the gazebo. That's what they did. And then I brought them down. And Oprah was like that, looking at the grounds going, isn't this beautiful? Absolutely beautiful. And I was watching Oprah. And I was watching Stedman. They were watching everything. And she looked at me and she went, are you the butler? I went, yes. And I said, my wife works with me. Oh, it's a beautiful place. I said, yeah, we keep it beautiful. And they sat down, they had a drink. And then my wife went back to the kitchen to get it all ready in the main house. And then eventually they'd sit down and they were talking business about Mandela in Africa. You know, you could hear certain things, but I wasn't that interested. I just did my job. Then we done the salmon. We did the dessert. And they had coffee. And Mr. Giles was always drinking his wine, the Pouilly Foussé. That was his favourite white wine, Pouilly Foussé. And next thing, the door opened. And she comes in to the kitchen. And she said to me, this was absolutely beautiful. And she said to me, where are you from? I said, Liverpool. She went, that was the most amazing meal I've ever had. So we started doing some banter with her. Thought I'll let her down here. I said, how's your show going? She went, it's great. I said, yeah, I watch you now and again on my break here. She went, do you? I said, yeah. I said, do you want me on the show? She started laughing. And I started laughing with her. And I said, I can go on the show, you know. I'll tell you some stories about Beverly Hills. Anyway, she started laughing. And then she started laughing. She went, how long have you been? I said, I've been a butler all my life, you know, apart from what I've done in the past. It's fucking nuts. She said, oh, you're amazing. So anyway, she stayed the night, actually. She stayed the night, and then the next day I took care of her. And I gave them breakfast, took care of her in Stedman. They had lunch, and then the limousine come. And she'd come like every month.
Wow.
And I got to know her. And she was, I found her to be a nice woman. That's the way I found her. A lot of people say different. And I just carried on, and we carried on with the Giles, having all these experiences. And then Terry was doing a trial. He'd gone out, and there was a guy, it was called the Fred Bar Douglas murder in Orange County. It was very famous, where he'd gone out, this guy, committed murder, and Terry Giles had got him off with the murder. He went out again.
Did another one.
He did another one, but she didn't die. He chopped the girl's arms off.
Hold on, this is our guy from Joey Torres interview.
Is it?
Yeah. He was in prison with this guy, Larry something.
I don't know his name.
Yeah, because the guy said to him, you chopped her arms off when she got like so much money. And he said, well, the bitch can't spend it, can she?
Yeah.
That's what the killer, he said in prison to this guy.
Yeah. That was probably the case.
Yeah.
Isn't that so coincidental, Shaun?
Yeah.
Very coincidental.
Scary guy, the killer.
Yeah, he was. He was. So what happened with Teddy Giles, he was the greatest criminal lawyer with another guy called John Barnett, which I'd meet John later on after I'd have some trouble in Los Angeles. I'd meet John down the line. He was going to, he actually defend, I'll tell you the story when he defends me. And Teddy Giles had come to the conclusion that, I've had enough of defending killers. And he quit criminal law. And he moved into an area of corporate law where he was very well known in the world as one of the greatest lawyers from Pepperdine University you could ever go to. Anyway, he took this case, and it was Computerland in the 80s. And how I know about the case is because they shared it with me, and I got to look after the owner of Computerland, and he was the 5th richest man in the world, and his name was Bill Millard. So he was coming to the house, and Teddy consulted me to tell me that